Good morning. Today we look at Deuteronomy 30 and 31. Tomorrow morning is a Sunday again, third Sunday of the month. We'll have worship with Holy Communion at Mabel in Sutton at 9 and at Our Savior's in McHenry at 10:30. And I'll be live as normal at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. You're welcome to join us in person or on Facebook for worship and Holy Communion. As we look at these two chapters today, Moses is finishing his second speech to the people, and the end of chapter 31 talks about Moses' song, and that's in 32, so we'll get to that on Monday. I didn't want to lead into that today, but today Moses is reminding the people that, of the blessings and the curses. And chapter 30 starts, "It will come to pass when all these things come upon you, the blessing and the curse I have set before you, and you call them to mind of the name of the Lord." I mean, Moses says these things are all going to happen. And when we get over, into, especially in verse 31, God says, "I know the inclination of these people. I know they're going to sin. I know they're going to fall away." But God promises in and through all of that to be faithful. And so Moses is reminding them of all of this. And in verse 9 of chapter 30, it's, "For the Lord will again rejoice over you for good, as he has rejoiced over your fathers, if you obey the voice of the Lord your God, and if you keep his commandments." I mean, this is what God wants for people, is to follow his commandments, to have a good life. I mean, the commands that God gives, the rules and things that he sets down are for our good, for our benefit, for our best life. And this is what Moses then starts to talk about. The next chapter, verse 11 says, it's the choice of life or death. "For this is the commandment," Moses is saying, God's words, "which I command you. It's not too mysterious for you, nor is it too far off. It's not in heavens that you say, 'Who's going to go there?' It's not across the sea. You don't have to go searching for it. It's not too difficult. It's not hard to find God's will for you. Nobody has to search it out because we know it." That's verse 14 says, "The word is very near you. It's in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it." And that's, Jeremiah 31 to 34. God says, "I will make a new commandment. I will write it upon your heart. No longer will anyone need to teach it to you, for you will know it in your heart." And I think that, I think that's very true, that we know the difference between good and evil. We have a conscience, and we know what we should do, and we often, even knowing what we should do, find ourselves doing the wrong thing. But it's here, way back here in Deuteronomy, Moses says, "The word is very near you. It's in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it." It's that reminder that we know what it is that God has taught us. And then as he goes on, "I have set before you today life and death, good and evil. And in that I command you to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his commandments, to follow his judgments, that you may live and multiply and have a joyous and happy life." I've set before you life and death. I mean, who wouldn't choose life? I mean, it's, very often I'll have, hear someone say, "Well, I woke up on the right side of the earth this morning," or "I woke up and I'm still alive." And, who doesn't choose life? Our bodies are created to live, and they fight hard to live. And with all of that, why would we choose a life that is devoid of God? Why would we choose to deliberately sin? Why would we choose to deliberately, kill and murder, thief and steal? And why would we choose to break God's commandments? Why wouldn't we choose life? And why wouldn't the Israelites follow God and do what God would have them do, rather than follow the idols? We see so much. I see so much of what's going on in the world today. It's no different than what it was, in the days of Moses and Joshua and everything, with people wanting and thinking too much just of themselves, and not being willing to listen to God. But as we go on through this chapter 30, in verse 19, and second part of it, that therefore choose life, that both you and your descendants may live, that you may love the Lord your God, you may obey his voice, you may cling to him, for he is your life and your length of days. And then you will dwell in the land of the Lord that the Lord swore to your fathers. So when we choose to follow God, and this is what Moses is saying to the Israelites, when you choose to follow God and you do what it is that God requires of you. I mean, I don't like to think of it as what God requires of us so much, but it's what God would have us do. And why would we choose the other? I mean, why would we choose not to listen to God? But then again, why would we choose sometimes not to listen to our parents when we grow up? Because we got to learn for ourselves, or we're maybe a little bit bullheaded. Everybody's got a little bit of that in them. Chapter 30, Moses has been told by God, and he has come to that understanding that he's not going to get to the promised land. And so Moses is going to introduce and initiate Joshua as the new leader of the Israelites. In the first few verses, God is talking to Moses and reminding him of that, and Moses is speaking these words to Israel, and he starts out saying, I am now 120 years old, and we can break that life into these 40-year increments pretty easily. But verse 6 is such a wonderful verse to think of. God says, be strong and of good courage. Do not fear or be afraid of them, for the Lord your God, he is the one who goes before you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and of good courage. Don't fear. God is with you. God is leading and guiding. And again, just as, a lot of people will say to me, well, I woke up on the right side of the earth today, a lot of people will say to me that, I'm sure glad that I get my strength from God. I rely on God, and he is, we get that strength and courage and the ability to face the difficulties of our lives. It makes it much easier to face the difficulties of our lives when we have that faith and trust in God. And so that's just that's a great verse to know and to rely on. Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you. And then it's kind of said again in verse 8, he is the one who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. And for these Israelites, I think about it for the Israelites as they're going into the promised land. They're going up against big numbers of people. They're going up against people that seem to be stronger, more populous, and everything. But yet God is saying to them, don't be afraid because I am with you. And it's one of those, as I said, so many people have said to me over the years that, that I trust in God. I know that God is with me, and knowing and trusting in God makes this easier to face and easier to go through. And it, it's just, do not fear or be dismayed. He will not leave you. He will not forsake you. God isn't going to turn his back on you. And it's, as I read this too, I think about, with especially where, Good Friday is not so far away, and we hear Psalm 22 as Jesus says, why have you forsaken me? And you feel lost and you feel left out and everything, but it's do not fear or be dismayed, for he won't forsake you. And in that Psalm 22, as much as it starts out, with that feeling of lost and alone, it turns around to be a psalm of praise and reliance upon God as well. So even within all of that, it turns around, and it's a song of lament, of feeling alone, but yet also reminding us that God is with us. In verse 21 of chapter 31, here's where God is straight out with the people. He says, I know the inclination of their behavior, your behavior, the Israelites' behavior. For even when I have brought them to the land that I gave to them, he says, I know their inclination. They're going to sin. They're going to mess up. They're not going to listen. They're not going to follow me. But in and through it all, God promises to walk with them each and every day and to lead and to guide them. And within this reading in here too, I mean, it talks about how they're dispersed, they're scattered, but yet when they come back to that trust and the belief in God, God is again and promises to always be with them, no matter what goes on in their lives.